Now we're going to see how to use a summary and a fixed window messaging strategy with chat in LangChain. So when you're just chatting with a large language model, it doesn't normally just remember what you've been discussing, like you might take for granted with things like ChatGPT and others. It actually has to keep a history of what you've discussed and send that back into the prompt. We're going to see how we can do this now with a summary and a fixed window. In the last two parts, we saw other ways to do this where you just kind of kept this unbounded array of messages. Now what we're going to do is if the messages get too long, we're going to go ahead and truncate them. And if the messages get too long and we're using the summarizer, then it'll summarize those using a large language model itself to actually produce that summary. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. I'm going to go ahead and open this in Colab. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and run this first part so that you can have this going in the background. I'm going to give you really 3 classes in this. These are not standard LangChain classes. LangChain removed the ability to do fixed window messaging and summarization in the latest version because they're leaving this they view it as application specific. So they are not providing this. I provide you these 3 classes. And part of the reason they don't provide it is you can very easily use, say, ChatGPT or one of the other large language models just to write these. That is exactly what I did in this case. These 3 classes were generated from prompts of mine, just describing exactly what I wanted to do. So the first one is just Passthrough. It's like we had in the previous part. It's just going to build up a longer and longer array of messages. And then at some point, it's going to just error out because it's going to have too much data. We can also specify a fixed window messaging strategy. And we'll see that after that it exceeds that number, it just starts throwing things away. And then we'll see a summarization message strategy. This is where instead of just throwing it away, it keeps a summary. So we'll see that I'm able to basically just put it in a loop and give it a lot of information. And that causes it to basically forget some of the earlier things that I told it, even though they were important. The third, the summarization, it won't forget those things from the beginning because it will still consider them important and they'll find a way into the summary, especially if you tell it that they are important. So we're going to create a number of classes here to implement this. This is just the base messaging strategy. This is what the others will extend from. And it is using a LangChain in-memory chat history that it's sort of based on. So we have ways to add messages and to add the AI and to add the user messages as well, because you want to keep track of both sides of that conversation. This is the very first one that we create. This is the pass-through. This works exactly as we saw before. You can see this class really does nothing. It just passes it on to the previous in-memory messaging strategy that we saw in the previous part. Now for the fixed window one, we're going to have a window size, and we are going to implement it here. So this is the fixed window one. You can see it defaults to 12 messages, and this is how it basically enforces it. It trims it in place as it's being called. And again, this is all my own creation. Well, my own prompt that I had ChatGPT create it for me. But this basically gives you a windowed chat history. If you needed something more complicated, maybe a window and summarization, or you wanted your own specific type of summarization, that's part of why they removed these classes from LangChain, is you can simply have ChatGPT create them for you, or any other like Claude Code or Cursor. This class that we can make use of here, it implements the window before, but when the window exceeds, it is going to start to summarize. And that summary will be very useful so that it doesn't forget important details of information. This is implemented in largely the same way. I created this basically just by describing it and having ChatGPT create it, but you'll see that it starts with the system message just like before, and then continues with human messages going on. It makes sure to insert your previous history, which includes a summary, into your context window. We are keeping track of the 3 different types of messaging strategies that we have. That way we can select them as needed. And this is similar to what we had before, but this is the base class that implements all of these. So let's see how to actually use them. If I run this and I use the simple conversation like I did before, it is going to default to the basic message strategy that doesn't have a window. So I'm able to give it just the usual conversation, and it gets a little philosophical when I ask it who I am there, but that was largely just what we had before, proving that it can still do that. This is the test, the history and the overflow, because the truncating. So here you can see, I say, okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Jeff. You have one job. Remember that my favorite color is blue. And I'm going to also ask it if it remembered my name and if it remembered my favorite color. And then what I do is I loop through and I put in 20 just additional prompts where I'm having it memorize random dates that I create here. And what happens is it pretty well, this goes on for a bit, it pretty well remembers, but then when I'm asking it what my favorite color is at the end, it has forgotten, because enough stuff has been pushed into that array stack that it no longer remembers what you were talking to it about. So it failed. It's one job. We can also display the history like you see here. So now we're going to test the summarizing one. We're going to see that it is able, so you can see here, I started up with the strategy of summarizing that you can see here. I keep the last 8, and the trigger length is 16, at which it's going to start to summarize. So here you can see I hit it with all the random dates before, just like we did before. But now it is able to remember my favorite color. So because it's summarizing, it's not just throwing the old information off, it is actually using the summary, using the large language model itself to summarize, and it knows, oh, okay, I'm specifically saying it's important to know what the favorite color is, so it's going to remember that. We can also display the summary that it's keeping internally, just so we can see kind of how it's working. All right, thank you for watching this video. This shows you how you can now summarize and truncate messages. Now that LangChain doesn't really support this directly, you can create your own classes and provide these as chat memory. Thank you for watching, and if this video was useful, please hit the like button and also subscribe so that you can stay up to date on all of my other projects and this class.